Hi, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for stopping by. This week we're going to show you all the steps that I do when I'm roughing in burls to cast in resin. And this is a piece of cherry burl. Cherry is very prone to cracking, as you can see here from the ends, which I don't mind when I'm going to cast them in resin. So I'm going to rough this in and kind of see what it looks like it'll make. I'm going to start out with the contour of the biggest part of the burl and just clean that up and see how things look. I'm hoping to get a vase or a hollow form out of it. Now I'm going to do most of the turning in real time except for when I'm making the tenon on the bottom. And I'll just speed that up 2 or 3 times. There won't be a finished product at the end of this video. We'll do that in a couple weeks, but I am looking for some input from you to help me decide what color resin I cast this in. So I've got every color under the rainbow here, I believe. And so leave your suggestion in the comments if you wouldn't mind. And after we get a bunch of them gathered up, I'll build a mold for this and I'll cast it and we'll turn it in a video probably in 2 weeks. We'll give it a week for people's suggestions. And I'll show building the mold and the casting and turning obviously in the next video in a couple weeks. So I'm looking for lots of suggestions. So please, if you do watch the video, please do leave the color you'd like to see in the comments. So I've got it turned down now so that I can kind of get an idea what the outside will roughly look like. Made a decision that this is going to be the bottom, and so I'm going to start now and turn a tenon on the bottom. So I have the angle on this chisel ground to be exactly the same as the jaws that are on my 4-jaw chuck. They're a dovetail. And that way I get a perfect tenon or mortise every time. I'm going to turn this a little larger than normal because this is probably between 12 and 15%. It's been in my shop for a year and a half, and that's normally where the equilibrium is for my moisture content. So it is going to be dried to 0, and there's a good chance that it'll shrink. So I want to make sure that I have lots of tenon left for when it's dry. All right, we're starting to get to some wood here now. And a really nice figure in that burl. Just want to get rid of this bark here and here. So I'm down to a shape that I like and the size that I think is going to work for casting. So now I'm going to remove all the bark that's on this piece in all the voids with this little Dremel tool. And I'll show you the bit here in a minute. Got my lathe unplugged so that there's no danger of it coming on while I'm working away here, but I've got to take all the bark off all these areas that I'm showing you here now. I don't leave any bark on, whether it's tight or not, because I don't like to risk the bond between bark and wood. And this takes a while, so I'm going to do it off camera and I'll bring you back when it's all done and I'll show you the next step. Alright, so I've gone all over this, so what seemed like a couple of seconds to you was significantly longer than that. It's probably I won't say it's the worst part, but it's the least fun part of doing these is getting that bark off. Now I know I'll get lots of comments and saying that different people don't take the bark off, and if they can keep bark on after they cast it in resin and not have it separate, good for them. I would not be that lucky, so I take all the bark, every bit. And technically you don't need to go any deeper really than the thickness of your finished wall. So if I'm going to go 3/8 of an inch thick on this wall, I really only had to clean this down. But all this stuff that's in here has a chance of coming loose and getting dirt into my resin. So I clean it out down as deep as I can reach. And you see this one's got lots of stuff going on. So everywhere there's a void, we'll fill up with resin. So hopefully we'll get some really nice designs all through here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is weigh this. I'm going to put it on the scale. I'm going to mark the weight on the bottom, and it will go into the kiln / kitchen oven for as long as it takes to have it stop losing weight. And usually that will be a couple of days minimum. So I'm going to put that in, and I'll bring it back when it's dry, and getting ready to put it into the vacuum chamber to stabilize the wood. Alright, so this has been in the oven at 225 degrees Fahrenheit for 48 hours, actually a little bit longer than that, 50 hours almost. It started at 2.478 kilograms. I pulled it out. I left it in there a long time actually, because I know from experience that there's no sense of even checking it after the first day. So I left it a day and a half. It went down to 2.146. As you can see, I wrote it down here, and then I gave it another about 8 more hours, and it's at 2.130. So this was at 14% moisture content. It's only lost 0.016 kilograms in the last 8 hours. So it is essentially, it's dry. It's much, you can feel the difference. You can feel the difference in the weight in it from now to then. It did something kind of neat actually, and I've not had one do this before. I'm not sure if the camera's going to pick it up or not, but if you look right in here, it's split. Of course, it's going to crack. I've had them do that, and that's fine. I'm happy with that, because that'll just add more resin color into the piece, the finished piece. But it actually checked right around the tenon. Now that won't matter when the resin's in there. That'll all be bonded and it'll be strong, as strong as the wood, so it's not an issue. But I haven't had one do that before. So you can see that some of the cracks that were in it are now larger. And if you look in the face of the burl, some of those opened up, and there's some new ones, but that's all going to fill with resin, and that's just going to add to the color. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put it in some cactus juice resin, and we're going to stabilize it. And I stabilize all my hybrid pieces because I don't want my wood to move. So for anyone who is going to be kind enough to send me a suggestion on color in the comments, this is a really good look at the color of the wood and the figure in the wood, and so you can make your decision based on that. Alright, this is showing up a lot darker than it actually is, but the cactus is about 2.5 gallons of cactus juice in here, almost. And you see I've got a grate over top of it, which is helping to hold it down. And I'm going to put this bucket, which has a bunch of bolts on it, on top of that, so that it doesn't come up. Now that's not going to be an issue in terms of getting the bolts and stuff messy, because unless I allow the foam to come over top, they'll be intact. And won't be an issue. So now I'm going to put that in the vacuum chamber, and we're going to let that run until the bubbles stop, and I'll show you the start. And if you're wondering what's floating in there, one of the last things I stabilized was some pine cones, and they still had a few seeds in them, so I have to strain those out. So you need a lot of cactus juice to do it this way. I know a lot of people don't like to use cactus juice. I don't think there's a need for it. And that's a personal preference, I guess, but I just find that if I stabilize my wood first, it doesn't go anywhere after, and it's much better for me. So I'm going to speed up the first part of the vacuum chamber process, and I'm only going to show a little bit of it because it's not that exciting, and I muted out the sound of the vacuum chamber because also that is not that exciting to listen to. So it took about 8 hours for the bubbles to stop. Once they stopped, I turned it off and I've allowed it to soak. The rule of thumb is that you let it soak for the same number of hours as it took for the bubbles to come out. So now everything is ready to come out. Now we're going to want to let this drip dry, because anywhere that we let the resin lay before we cure it in the oven, we're going to have to take it back off. I think this way is the best way. That is much heavier than it was. Once we get it all done, dried off, we'll weigh it, see how much resin we actually got into it. Alright, so we're out of the oven now. Cactus juice needs 3 hours at 200 degrees to cure and set. I left it in probably 3.5 hours actually. It now weighs just around 3 kilograms, so it almost added half its weight in resin, which tells me it's probably pretty good. A lot of pieces, smaller pieces or less dense pieces, will actually double in weight. I didn't expect that this one would, and I'm pretty confident that we got a real good stabilization, at least on the shell, which is what matters because we're going to hollow this out. So here's one last look at the color. It's a little bit dark in this light, and when I put more light on it, strangely enough, it gets darker. So for anyone who does want to put their suggestion in for the resin color, here's the last peek at it, and I'd appreciate everyone who does give a suggestion. So if you're still with me, thanks for sticking around. I really appreciate it. Thanks again to everyone who watches the videos and subscribes to the channel. I appreciate that a ton as well. And we'll see you next time.